For the next 30 days, like I decided to buy nothing. And it was way harder than I thought. Hi, I'm Dave. And I'm terrible with money, but I'm trying to fix it. I gave myself a challenge. For 30 days, I would stop buying anything that wasn't necessary. I could still buy food. I could still pay bills. I could still get essentials. But everything else was out. No random online orders, no gadgets, no clothes, no little treats that somehow become a weekly event. No buying something just because I was bored, tired, stressed, or standing too close to a checkout line. If it wasn't necessary, it had to wait. I thought this would be simple. And that was my first mistake, because when you say, I'm not buying anything, your brain immediately starts presenting evidence that everything is somehow urgent. Suddenly, every object develops a sales pitch. A new shirt becomes practical. A gadget becomes useful. A random item online becomes something you've apparently needed your whole life without realizing it. The challenge started before I even bought anything. It started with the argument in my own head. The first few days were all about catching myself. Not at the cash register, much earlier than that. At the ad, at the scroll, at the moment where a completely normal afternoon suddenly turns into, maybe I should buy this. That's the part I used to miss. I thought spending started when I click buy now. It doesn't. It starts way earlier. When an idea gets planted and your brain starts watering it like it's a houseplant. And once that little idea grows roots, it starts feeling less like a temptation and more like a plan. Limited time offer. This is exactly how they get you. Not with logic, with urgency, with countdowns, with fake scarcity, with that tiny little feeling that if you don't buy it right now, you're missing your one and only chance to become the kind of person who owns this exact water bottle, desk lamp, or pair of shoes. It's amazing how dramatic online shopping can feel when the product is objectively not that serious. Then there was boredom, and boredom is dangerous. Boredom makes spending feel like an activity. You're not buying because you need something. You're buying because it feels like something is happening. A package is on the way. A reward is coming. Future you is about to be happier, more organized, more stylish, more whatever the product promised 5 minutes ago. Boredom doesn't just make you restless. It makes nonsense look exciting. It turns scrolling into temptation and temptation into a full evening plan. I didn't realize how often I used shopping as a mood change until I tried to stop. Sometimes I wasn't even interested in the item. I was interested in the feeling around the item. The little burst of possibility, the hit of novelty. The sense that I was improving my life somehow, even if I was really just buying another thing to put in a drawer. That was uncomfortable to notice because it meant a lot of my spending wasn't practical. It was emotional. And then, of course, there was the running joke that stopped being funny. The fridge. Every time I got the urge to buy some random thing online, I opened the fridge, and every time the fridge looked like a documentary about financial priorities gone wrong. One sad yogurt, half a lemon, maybe some leftover rice in a container that had emotionally given up. And somehow, that fridge became the most honest part of this whole challenge. The fridge kept exposing the difference between real needs and emotional wants. Because groceries are boring. Groceries don't come in sexy packaging with dramatic lighting and a countdown timer. Groceries don't whisper, "This will change your life." Groceries just stand there like adults and say, "You need to eat." Meanwhile, my brain was trying to convince me that a random desk accessory was somehow more urgent than food, which is not a great sign. Around the first week, I noticed something else. Not buying things felt weirdly loud. Normally, if I felt stressed or bored or restless, I could open an app, look at products, add something to cart, and feel a tiny sense of relief. Remove that option, and suddenly you're left alone with your actual mood. No distraction, no reward, no fake solution arriving in 2 business days. Just you and the uncomfortable feeling you were trying to outshop. That was the hard part. Not the money, the space, the pause, the fact that I couldn't instantly, because dopamine spending is not really about the product. It's about the interruption. It gives you a quick emotional shift. For a minute, you feel excited, distracted, rewarded, in control. But once I stopped buying things, I had to admit that a lot of my spending had been less about need and more about self-medication with free shipping. FOMO showed up too. That was annoying. Every sale suddenly felt personal. Every deal looked like an opportunity I would regret missing forever. Which is ridiculous because most of the things I almost bought last month I cannot even remember now. But in the moment, missing out feels real. It feels like everyone else is getting something good and you're the only one stuck being responsible. That's how emotional spending talks to you. It doesn't say, waste money. It says, don't be left behind. The strangest thing was how often I almost bought something out of habit. Not excitement, not need, just muscle memory. Open app, scroll, browse, add to cart. It was so normal, I barely noticed I was doing it. The challenge forced me to interrupt that pattern and ask one question I apparently had been avoiding for a long time. Why am I here? Sometimes the answer was I need something. Most of the time it was I'm bored and this feels easy. And once I started asking that question, the whole challenge changed. Because now it wasn't just a no-spend challenge, it was a pattern recognition challenge. I started noticing my triggers: bored at night, tired after work, slightly stressed, mildly lonely, weirdly proud of myself for doing something productive and suddenly convinced I had earned a reward. I wasn't just shopping for stuff, I was shopping for mood management, and that realization was both useful and slightly humiliating. By the second week, something shifted. The urge didn't disappear, but it got easier to recognize, and instead of instantly believing it, I could see it happening. There's the ad. There's the boredom. There's the little fantasy that this item is going to improve my life. Once I could see the script, it stopped feeling inevitable. That was new. Before, wanting and buying were practically the same event. Now, there was space in between, and in that space, something surprisingly calm started showing up. Not motivation, not discipline in some dramatic movie sense. That question did more work than I expected because most of the time, the item wasn't the answer. I just didn't love the mood I was in. And then I noticed the payoff. More money left in my account. Not huge, rich person money, just less leaking, less random damage. Fewer tiny charges I'd forgotten 5 minutes later. But it wasn't only the money. I also felt calmer. There were fewer "why did I buy that" moments. Fewer packages showing up that felt exciting for 8 seconds and then immediately turned into clutter. That surprised me more than I expected. I thought that buying less would feel restrictive. Instead, after a while, it started feeling lighter. Less noise, less decision fatigue, less weird guilt attached to small purchases that didn't even matter. It turns out a lot of spending doesn't just cost money. It costs attention. It costs energy. It costs that low-level stress of managing things you never really needed in the first place. I'm not saying I became some perfect anti-consumer monk. I still wanted stuff. I still had moments where a discount tried to seduce me, like it knew my personal history, but the challenge exposed something important. Most spending isn't logical, it's emotional. It's mood-based. It's boredom with a price tag. It's stress wearing nice packaging. And once I saw that clearly, it got a lot harder to pretend every impulse was reasonable. That's the lesson I'm taking from this. A no-spend month doesn't just save money. It shows you how often you were spending for reasons that had nothing to do. And that's uncomfortable, but useful. Because once you see the difference between a real need and an emotional urge, you stop confusing them so easily. I want to see what happens when I take those same triggers and build a system to stop them before they turn into purchases. If this video helped you, subscribe and hit like. I'll see you in the next one.